Welcome to And Ninthly,
an Inside Number 9 podcast.
with your host, me, David.
And me, John.
Hello, John.
Hello, David.
Nice, sonorous, musical. I like it.
Ah, thanks.
Um,
Classically trained, you know. Yes.
yeah, you are. Yeah, you really, really are. How are you? Are you all right?
Very well. Yeah, very well, thanks. I'm currently sat in some unusual sunshine coming through my window, which is very strange because less than about an hour ago there was an absolutely biblical hailstorm here in southeast London. So the apocalypse appears to be on its way. I guess it's all gearing up for 4th of July. Maybe this is a bad omen. Maybe it's
because we've nearly completed our Ninth Symphony, and this is what's
our Ninth Symphony, or we're in the ninth circle of hell.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to tell because we normally do this face to face. Well, not face to face, but on Zoom, looking at each other. And my camera's broken for some reason that I can't detect. So John's turned his camera off in solidarity. So I'm glad he's updating me on the weather because I have no way of knowing where he is anymore.
But yeah, normally you'd be able to see. So I'm just updating you what my living room looks like today. Just to give you the same feel as you normally have.
Yeah.
Listeners, I've got one of those sneaking suspicions that David has either done something technically ludicrous for his camera not to work, or I don't know. Have you got some kind of nasty blemish or bruise on your face today?
I wish. No, I think it's. I don't know what I mean by that. It's no, I instantly wish that I'd come up with some sort of stunt or plan to take advantage of this suspense. But no, I think I'm going to remain invisible. Hopefully that'll be finished by next week. But yeah, here we are.
And also for everyone who never sees us, this must be absolutely top-notch chat.
Really? Yeah, because this isn't a video podcast anyway, so we're literally just talking about something that makes no difference to the listeners whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Moving on. So we're here to talk about the penultimate ever episode of Inside Number 9, we believe, that that aired last week on Wednesday, the 5th of June. 2024.
We believe? Did you say penultimate episode? We believe.
Well, you know,
is there some doubt that there's going to be a final episode part 2?
They're being pretty committal about it, aren't they? I'm not getting much doubt from them. I think I think did they say at a fairly early stage? You know, we reserve the right to do more in the future at some stage, but they kind of look like this is it, really, don't they? It's looking pretty final. Yeah,
and obviously because they've already got the stage show in the works. That's going to be next year. Obviously, it's not the end, but in terms of, you know, the 6-episode, 9-series TV show format, I think this is the last we're going to see of them in this context. So yes, be declamatory, David. This is the penultimate episode.
Did we mention actually on this podcast that we're going to see the stage show? I'm not sure if we actually mentioned that on mic.
Not sure, but now you have.
Yeah, we are. We got tickets for this is happening in London. I'm sure a lot of Inside Number 9 fans listen to this will have either be going or attempted to get tickets for it. But we actually managed to get tickets for it, and it's in February next year, 2025, that we're going to go and see it. So it's still a way off, and obviously we know nothing at all about it. But it's going to be really interesting.
Oh man, is it February?
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh man, I hibernate in February.
Yeah, I usually watch the Six Nations in February, so I'll have to reschedule. But yeah, it's going to be great, and we'll probably come back with some episode coverage of that, just because it'll be interesting to chat about that. But that's some way off. Yeah, for now though, the penultimate episode of Inside Number 9, The Curse of the Ninth. What do you think of this one?
we're going straight in, are we?
A little bit, at least. Yeah.
Do you know what? I want you to start because I started last week and I said I fucking loved it, and then you kind of said you didn't. Well,
not as much.
Much. So I want to see what happens this week if you go first.
Yeah. Okay. Didn't really care for this one. didn't really think it was a very good penultimate episode, and I've rewatched it as usual, and it's actually maybe diminished slightly, but there is a caveat. There's a sort of big, I suppose, like a sort of big caveat / question mark around that, because I think, and we'll talk about it obviously, I think my opinion of it is somewhat, and this is maybe a little unfair or just won't work out very well for me, but is somewhat dependent on what they do next week. That's the short version.
Could you, doing my best Melvin Bragg, doing my best Melvin Bragg, can you just, can you expand on that, David? Can you expand on what you mean by that?
Yeah, I'll try. So I think this is, on the surface of it, and, as I got further through the episode on the first watch, I was like, it might not be doing this, but it looks like it's doing this. Got to the end of it, and it did seem to be doing this. This is, on the surface of it, a very, very trad ghost story, essentially. A very trad, as I'm sure, I haven't read the reviews yet, but as I'm sure multiple reviews will have put out, M.R. Jamesy, particularly Mark Gatiss Ghost Stories for Christmas, we'll get back to that, type project that they've done, a love letter to that kind of thing. Competently done, I think, for the most part, although I wouldn't even say transcendentally done, really. But it has notes of self-examination, obviously, self-referentiality, in terms of the completion of a ninth. Obviously, not a huge insight that, but it does, and it wears them fairly lightly. But we obviously have no idea what's happening with the actual completion of their ninth next week. We don't know what they're doing about that at all, and it's really interesting to speculate about. But if this episode chimes interestingly with or speaks nicely to that finale, it will go up in my estimation inevitably. But I have no evidence of that yet. And as a standalone, it disappoints me and somewhat not baffles me, because I see why they, with their tastes and interests and genre fixations and just the point they're reaching in the series, would do this. But it didn't really hit for me.
Okay. Well, thank God you went first. Yeah, I mean, similarly, no, of course not similarly. I fucking loved it. It was glorious. What's wrong with you?
Wow. We've really drifted apart over the course of doing this, haven't we?
I thought you were taking the piss there for a second. When
No.
Oh, I didn't care for it. I was like, oh, okay, he's doing that, is he? No, you really didn't. Really? Wow.
This is where the camera goes back on. I'm actually having a party with the entire cast of it.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll respond. I loved this immensely for numerous reasons, but fundamentally, yeah, it's a kind of trad ghost story, perhaps you could argue. But I think you just saying, nicely done is a little demeaning of it, because I think it's actually beautifully done. I think it's full of ideas and scares and concepts and knowledge, and it's an attempt to bring a new element of culture into their armory, to marry together this idea of there being a superstition around classical composers of the ninth, more on which later, but also having this kind of class structure going on underneath it as well. In those dynamics, initially it reminded me a little bit of The Dig, the film about finding the Saxon hoard with Ralph Fiennes and Carey Mulligan, and they play this kind of very, very working class, I'm just gonna dig shit up, and the kind of lady of the manor, and it reminded me of that in a really delightful way. I also so I won't get into too much detail yet, but I also think they're just having tremendous fun. And I always love watching them having fun. And I think just everything, the costume, the setting, the fact that they're doing this kind of spooky story that's not, it's not going to particularly involve anyone getting in loads and loads of makeup and doing something gory or spectacular, although that will happen. There's a bit when Steve Pemberton, Dickie Van Ass, Or Dickie Van Arse,
Yeah.
depending on whose pronunciation you go with. I had the subtitles on, by the way, and it's spelled AAS.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful. Anyway, there's a scene where he's talking to Quigley, to Reece Shearsmith's character at the piano, and he's just wearing this lovely 3-piece suit with this beautiful bow tie and a watch chain, and he takes out this lighter and he lights a cigarette. And part of me is just going, "Oh, you're having a great day at work, aren't you? Oh, you're having so much fun doing this. I can see why you're. I wonder if you had like a bucket list when you got to the ninth series of like just things we want to dress up as. What haven't we? And also, like, are they going to keep their favourite costumes at the end of the run? Are they in the market for getting themselves some really nice new suits and waistcoats? Who knows?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I think it's funny you joke about this, and this is kind of, it can be a good thing, I think, but I would say this is one where they're having fun, perhaps too much fun in a way. But I was thinking of other, because you mentioned the dig, that's interesting. I was thinking about a few things, but like the draftsman's contract is another one that it sort of echoes a little bit. But I was thinking within Inside Number 9, what it echoes maybe is them having what you might call dress up fun in things like the Witchfinder episode back in series 2. Because again, it's them returning to this well that they've kind of tapped since the League sketches, and even pre the League show and everything, where they enjoy the genres they love, and some of that is M.R. James Ghost Story, some of it's Hammer horror films, and everything in between, and Amicus movies and all that sort of stuff. And this is playing in those. This is playing in those respects, I think, and it's just, I think for me, you could admire little bits and pieces of it, I thought, but it didn't really transcend them, I suppose. And I think even stuff like the humorous touches that they get into it fell a bit flat for me, maybe because I was, not enthused with the project as a whole, really. So, things like the riffing on getting Devonshire's name wrong repeatedly and stuff like that, just by substituting other counties. I was like, yeah, really? It was just falling a bit flat for me. But I think going back to last week's episode, which we both liked ultimately, in the escape room, I think maybe because that episode had such a pronounced, not just like final twist, but like shift 2/3 of the way through the episode, rather than just a sort of like last 2 minutes twist or whatever, because they can do that effectively as well. But this was a big shift. I think that made me want one in this. And I know the scene where Natalie Dormer's character is, where it was revealed that they're blackmailing him essentially, and they're getting him to finish the symphony for them. It was about that point in the episode, probably just because it was 2/3 of the way through, I was like, this is gonna do the equivalent of a zoom out, isn't it? Because this is all so trad and so pastiche that it can't be that. It can't be that. It has to be something else, And then it didn't, obviously. Interesting.
Yeah. I had none of those problems. I was just taking it fully on the face value of, oh, great, they're gonna tell me a ghost story set in the early 1900s about a composer's curse. Thank you very much. No further questions. And also, can we just acknowledge as well? We've been saying this all through the series. Can you prepare to play a very specific clip for me in the edit, because it made me want to go in the voice of Janice from Ghostbusters. We got one. We finally got our supernatural episode. As soon as I saw the ghost appear in the reflection, I was like, yes, here it is. We've got our supernatural one.
It's funny, actually. We'll talk about the ghost. We'll talk again about the way it's presented and everything. But in terms of thinking, is this definitively supernatural? It's weird, isn't it? Because on rewatch, I was like, so they have they have what we, I guess, learn in the sense is the ghost at the end appear to Marston's character at the beginning, reflected in the piano.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the middle of the episode, his sanity is shed out on, basically, and you see from Dormer's character's perspective that she herself shoved the door open and is what he was scared of directly when he killed himself, So you do get this kind of doubling back on it of being like, well, is there a ghost? But I think because they were doing such a straight up ghost story thing, I actually, for better or worse, never assumed that would be the case. I just assumed, no, there's going to be a ghost. There's definitely a ghost. So even though I was expecting on one level a big genre twist, I've never doubted that they were putting a ghost in it from the beginning.
Yeah, okay. And it's sounding like maybe because this is the supernatural one we'd been waiting for, do you think there's an element of disappointment in that it hasn't lived up to, I don't know, a Harrowing, for example?
I thought about the Harrowing as well, actually. Yeah, it's interesting you should mention that one. Because that is, its impact on me all those years ago, literally 10 years ago, was somewhat that just the thing that appeared to be happening on the surface happens at the end, and they just carry it out. And it was unusual back then, especially for something you'd see on BBC Two. So I think the fact that maybe in the last 10 years again, thanks to Mark Gatiss, it's become much more usual to just see this sort of thing on the television. I don't know. Maybe that's part of the diminishing return of it.
There's a couple of interesting parallels. I watched the Harrowing, rewatched the Harrowing recently. There's a couple of little interesting things I picked up on. So you have got this big manor house, spooky to varying degrees. I think they're in what's basically an old church, but it just looks like a spooky manor house, where this kind of working class character comes into the house and sort of has art explained to them. Mm-hmm. There's a scene at the beginning of the Harrowing where Fionn Edwards' character comes in and the Helen McCrory character is showing her all the pictures, all those, I think a lot of them are Blake pictures of hell and the devil, and she's kind of explaining to her what the art is, and that just struck me as a parallel that it kind of does follow the same pattern with that. Interestingly enough, also, I know we mentioned this last week, they do a Fritzl reference in the Harrowing. That's like the third Fritzl reference.
Oh, I'd completely forgotten that. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One of the girls says to Fionn Edwards, it's, are they like the Fritzls or something along those lines.
Yeah, nice catch.
Just suddenly leapt out.
Back then, that was a slightly fresher news story than it is now.
Well, yeah, exactly. But, I'm also enjoying seeing these, and I'm sure they're not there, but I'm also enjoying seeing these little bookends. I mean, that was an episode in season 1, and we, the next reference comes up in the third from the end episode in season 9. I just, it's just interesting watching it all zooming out, I guess, on the whole series and seeing these nice little echoes.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. And I also picked up on the fact that, I think probably because we've just had it, that Shearsmith is playing another frustrated artist figure, just after the escape room wannabe actor last episode.
Ah, yeah, true. Yeah.
But then
true.
I suppose that's just so in their bread and butter, isn't it? Like going back to the League, that, that the frustrated character is such a, that's such a basic part of this sort of character comedy, isn't it? That it's no surprise that keeps cropping up again and again and again, especially because they obviously are artists, so that's always going to come through as a sort of Black Mirror kind of flip of their actual material success, isn't it? Maybe even more so as they get older and have had more success.
Yeah, I get that they're using a bit of a trope that they've used before, but actually, I thought it was going to take as much longer in the conversation for me to get to this. But actually, that's one of the things that I loved is I found the way that they handled it in this episode really beautiful, really touching, and really profound. It's in the scene with Nathaniel, Eddie Marsan. I mean, no notes. Thank you for getting Eddie Marsan. When Eddie Marsan's having the conversation with Reece Shearsmith, and there's this, it's beautiful, but this haunting speech that he gives about, how he can already see the black shadow of doubt enveloping his every choice. Why bother? You'll never reach the heights of Beethoven, but you never try. Why? Piano tuning is satisfying in its way. It takes an act of courage to create anything, and you, my boy, are a coward. Now, I read that out almost in full because I found it so beautiful and so profound, and not to shock any listeners out there who've probably picked up on several clues that, I've trained and pursued various artistic pursuits in my life, and have never been able to make a living out of them. So I've ended up doing administrative jobs that I'm perfectly content with, but have always had this kind of frustrated artistic side. So that just really, it really landed with me. So maybe it's a personal thing that's going on as much as anything here. But I found that deeply profound and moving, and is very much sold particularly by the two performances. I think they're both spectacular in that scene, and that whole scene's great as well.
With the chair in the background, they sort of
with the chair in the background. So, like, let's immediately go on to say that this is a Guillermo Morales directed episode, which, as we've said a couple of times before, he's directed so many of our favourite episodes, and this is what he does really, really well. He directed Riddle of the Sphinx, 12 Days of Christine, Diddle Diddle Dumpling, Empty Orchestra, The Stakeout, How Do You Plead? Like, he is... So it turns out he must be their actual go-to horror guy. So I looked him up on IMDb properly, which I don't think I'd ever done before. And he directed, a few years ago, there was a film called Julia's Eyes that Guillermo del Toro produced. And it turns out that Guillermo Morales directed that. So, he's got cred as an actual, bona fide horror director. He's not just a kind of TV journeyman. And again, this is, I feel like this is probably his last bite of the cherry before the end of the series. They've given him something to really sink his teeth into. And yeah, maybe it's a bit trad. It's not, there's nothing particularly shocking in this story. There's a curse. Oh no, there isn't. Oh yes, there is. Here it is. You're dead. Like, I get what you mean. There's nothing particularly sophisticated or complicated there. But actually, for me, that's its beauty, that it is so almost straightforward, which means that the tension and the performances can just shine through it rather than you being caught up with a twisty-turny plot.
Yeah. Well, I just want to briefly talk to the sort of direction and the look of it, because I suppose because they're filming in such an amazing old country house, there was one scene in particular on rewatch, particularly... But even enough on the first watch, really, where it's the one where they are blackmailing him, and Dormer's like pictured, I guess, as almost as though Quigley's looking up at her from the piano, So you see her from a low angle. So behind her, you can see huge parts of oak-panelled wall in relative darkness, and the ceiling and everything like that. And I was just looking up. I was looking obsessively at that, like all the shadows, because it is quite deliberately darkly lit. And I was kind of like, I was just looking around for I guess what we're calling the curse or the ghost or whatever, to see if they were doing any sort of hereditary type things where he was, pinned to the ceiling or something like that. I haven't detected any. But
interesting. I wasn't distracted at all in that way.
I haven't detected any yet, I should say. But if fans have watched it more or on better televisions than I have, then if you've spotted anything, please comment below, because I'd be very interested.
Well, interestingly, sorry to cut you off mid-flow. Interestingly, I had two attempts at watching this, because the first attempt at watching this, it was actually too early in the day. Now, I've got blackout blinds, as we've already discussed, my living room and my window, David. But a little bit of light can come in through the kitchen. And I watched the first 2 minutes and I had to stop. I was like, there's too many reflections on my screen. This episode is too dark to watch. So yeah, there is a lot in the image that potentially can be seen in different circumstances. Watch it when the sun's gone down. That's my advice.
Yeah, no, true. I actually, when you were talking about that scene before with Marston, appearing to him, I suppose it's good to note when we talk about supernatural stuff. He's also arguably a ghost, isn't he? I think it's presented more like just you're in a voice, you're in a monologue appearing to you in like as a metaphor, but you could see him as a ghost as well, alongside whatever this unknowable force is that's also manifested. I caught also that they reference in that scene the Conqueror Worm. They talk about death as the Conqueror Worm, which I know is the alternate title of the Witchfinder General, a film that they're obsessed with. Oh,
thank you. That I didn't know.
Which is a nice one. But I also, I guess, in that scene, that it's interesting some of the stuff they talk about musically, because when he's actually giving him concrete advice about what to do, or rather Quigley is interpreting his sort of vague advices and turning them into actual musical technique and sort of stuff well beyond my ken in terms of how you write an interesting symphony. One of the phrases I noted down actually was he talks about a false recapitulation.
False recapitulation resolved with a plagal cadence, fragmentation, inversion, imitation within the woodwinds. Use the diminished seventh to imply the secondary dominant.
Well,
yeah, I had the same thought. I had to write that down. I was like, oh, okay, this is a different language to me, but it's, you know, beautifully written because you know exactly what's happening, right? You know that this is, you know, this is the language of composers and musicians that I do not understand.
I just thought false recapitulation was such an interesting sort of either double or triple negative phrase. I was trying to uncode that in my mind, just you know, even not knowing the musical stuff. I was just like, what are they even saying there in basic language? But I was, but yeah, to put it this way, next week with the finale, I'm going to go back over that scene, know all the language down specifically, and see if any of it could be taken to be referring to what they do with the finale. Because obviously he's talking about how he's going to finish the 9th.
I see.
So if that could be extreme code for what they're doing next week, that's going to be a lot of fun. You know, but it's beyond. I'll literally need to get someone who's better at music to explain it to me, basically.
Oh look. Obviously, they're going to use the diminished seventh to imply the secondary dominant, David. Obviously, that's been clear from day one.
A false recapitulation? That's the oldest trick in the book.
Route 1.
And I'll be complaining about it next week as well. Because apparently I've just become very, very ungrateful.
No, it's good that you're, you know, that we are exhibiting how people can view this show differently and view various episodes differently.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and I think, you know, there's certain trends in their work that are starting to irk me more than they are you. You know, maybe you could sort of draw a line on some of the tendencies and stuff. But I'm trying to think of things that. So, okay, let's talk just because it's an interesting thing, and I'm accusing it of being dead trad. Maybe one of the more interesting things, just on a plot level, I guess, or morality level, is he does pass the curse on, right? She dies. Dormer's character dies, not him. She's arguably, by what we know, she's not a nice person, but she's not a murderer, as far as we know, right?
She's not, but she is by intention, because it all hinges on, does she believe the curse? And if she believes the curse, then she's doing the same to him as he's doing to her.
So she's tried to kill him.
Yeah, if she believes the curse, as Nathaniel says, well, why didn't she write it herself then? You know, because it is Nathaniel that kind of convinces Quigley that the curse is real, that it wasn't all just his writer's block, and there's all these bits where, you know, in that last scene, in that last confrontation, there's that nice little moment where she talks about, oh, I never believed in writer's block, my husband just got to the peak and lost oxygen, and Quigley just kind of goes, yeah, so you keep telling me. And it's clear that he, in his mind, certainly, he's worked out that the lady doth protest too much. So therefore, he is only doing to her. It's self-defense, right? If that's going to justify it. If it was a criminal case, it's purely in self-defense.
I'd quite like a note at the end there, you know, because she just basically, he does that. She's perturbed by his implication that she's the one who's, well, by his statement that she's finished the symphony. She looks worried about it, but then walks off and basically dismisses him. I'd almost like an implication that she's just about to go and phone a hitman or something, you know, like she's basically she is not going to let him live with this secret, basically, you know, that it really is self-defense, you know, that his doom is urgent materially, and that's, you know, more of a thing. But, you know, it's a ripple it doesn't need, arguably. But I guess because I was overall underwhelmed by it, I was kind of looking for more texture like that, maybe.
Yeah, I interpreted that moment differently. I interpreted Natalie Dormer's final kind of, it's the look when she closes the manuscript. Like, she knows and she believes in the curse. Like, there's no doubt in that second that she believes in the curse. And the way that she walks away, I didn't get any sense of, you know, she's going to seek revenge on him for this. She says, pleasure doing business with you. And she walks away like, oh, fuck. Yeah. I mean, I do believe in the curse. And I really hope the curse isn't true. Like, that's it. She knows there's now every chance that the curse is upon her because she does believe it.
There's a fine line between criticising the episode and rewriting it, as always. But I was wondering if also something that didn't really impress me was the twist, if you like, that he's passed the curse on to her. Just the person who completes the symphony is just the person who physically puts it together as a manuscript. I was like, because I thought, it's just in talking to you actually, I've been like, she could complete it in a different way, couldn't she? She just off the top of my head, he could like overhear something she was whistling earlier in the episode, and like that's literally the last few notes he puts in. So something that's come out of her brain completes the symphony or something like that. Some sort of trap like that, essentially. That isn't just ta-da, and that literally putting it physically together is it. Yeah, that just seemed a bit weak sauce to me. Even if you were reading like an M.R. James anthology or something, and I read that one, I'd be like, nah, there's not that much to that, really, is there?
Again, I don't know what's happening to us, David. I loved it. I thought that was a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
I thought having that single sheet of paper and for all the world it looking like he'd completed the symphony and he'd swallowed his reservations or whatever. He was being very calm about it all. And then he just calmly hands her this piece of paper. She snaps it shut. And then he repeats back a line from earlier. So when she's working on that puzzle block, she says, glorious to see all the little bits together. The picture isn't complete until the last piece goes in.
Yeah.
That's what he says back to her. And I actually only noticed that on like my third viewing. That it's like, okay, she says that earlier.
Yeah. Isn't that a moment he wasn't present for as well?
Oh, yeah, sure. I don't care. It's a moment he wasn't present for, but it's the phrase itself could be, it's a wink at us. That's a line for the audience, not necessarily, has to be verisimilitude of whether he overheard that exact phrase. I think. Maybe I'm going to end up, making lots of not excuses, but overpraising this, and you're going to underpraise it, and we'll
meet in the middle.
Find the middle ground.
Yeah, no, I was kind of hoping actually you could somewhat impress me with this one in conversation. Not to put too much pressure on you, but I was. It's what actually, funnily enough, you mentioned the puzzle block picture she's doing. That's one of the few bits I paused on, and I was and actually I wasn't. It was nothing to do with the picture, although I wouldn't be surprised if the hair's in there somewhere. What I was actually pausing on was does she make a picture out of 9 blocks per side? And I could confirm that she's not. It's 10 blocks per side. So there you go. I was somewhat interested in this episode, at least to the extent of looking into that. Because it's only because Devonshire scrambles it up so quickly. It's only visible very, very briefly. And I
cannot believe they missed a gift.
What a trick!
That's like a sitter. That's an open goal. Boys, what are you doing?
That image might be something else I look at ahead of next week's episode as well. I'm reading, basically all the value I'm seeing in this episode is looking ahead for slight runes or like entrails that I can get into with next week's episode, basically.
Well, next week you that's good, because next week will you? I was about to say you could just sit back and enjoy it, but it sounds like you're just going to be looking for references to previous episodes now.
No, I'm going to appreciate it on its own level, whatever that is, but then I'm definitely going to go back and look at maybe augurs and things like that. And I should say, actually, I've planned my week this week. It's this week now because we're recording this quite late, but in a few nights I will be watching the final episode at home, live, as it were, which I think I owe to it, basically. I think just in case there is any kind of actual deadline level fuckery going on. I can't imagine how they could possibly top that, but in case there's something like that, I want to be watching it live.
Completely the same. I've done exactly the same thing. It's I normally don't worry, even with 3x3. I wasn't that concerned with missing out, but with this, I'm like, I just it's like a World Cup final, isn't it? It's like technically you could keep yourself from knowing the score, and you could watch it later, but actually you kind of want to experience it as other people experience it. That's the best comparison I can come up with, and yes, I'll be doing the same in a couple of evenings.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
I just wanted to quickly go back to so you made a little reference there to the joke where Devonshire clears all of the blocks off the table, and I just wanted to say that you can argue that actually what I wrote down is a lot of the comedy in the beginning is very carry on. Actually, there's a lot of the not just the name mix up, but there's there's Natalie Dormer coming in and, you know, saying things like she hasn't been fingered in a while, and many a good tune played on an old piano, and him saying, I noticed your bust.
Yes, yeah.
Like, it's pure carry on, but again, it's done so po-faced, it's done so seriously and honestly that I found that quite charming. But what got a genuine big sat on my own laugh out loud moment was when she scraped the puzzle blocks off the table, because the timing of it was just delicious. It was, you know, they built it up so much, they'd spent time building it up, you know, and Natalie Dormer says, glorious to see all the little pieces together. The picture isn't complete until the last piece goes in. And as soon as she finishes the word in, you just cut to them being scraped into a box. Yeah. And it's beautifully timed. Really wonderful. And that actually made me laugh out loud. With the Devonshire name mix up, yeah, it grated on me a little bit. I was like, I mean, it's not even a very good gag to begin with. I don't understand why you're doing it like 3 times. But actually, the payoff is not a laugh. The payoff is that it gave them a way to distract her so that he could hit her with the spade. I think that they engineered that so that they could use that line as an entry line to him clobbering her with the spade.
Because he calls her Derbyshire.
So I kind of forgave it more after that.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. It doesn't, you know, just her yelling at him, I guess, isn't, you know... Tempers are flaring in that scene, you know, obviously, and again, you have that kind of weird class dynamic going on where she doesn't know about the musical side of things, but she's content with that, and he cares about the music, but is still a bit grubby and is still into the money side of it and all that sort of stuff, you know. But obviously you show the actual aristocrats in this, or the upper class, or the nouveau riche or whatever, and they're just as grubby and just as sordid and into it. You know, there's not really a truly nice person in this story, you know.
No, of course there isn't, and that you bring up the class thing there, which is interesting, because I think that was very notable, and we've talked about the Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith's relationship with class before, or how we perceive their relationship with class, I should say, through having watched this series. You know, and we've talked before about how we feel they are. You know, they're very different to the Oxbridge set. They're very different to the elites, and they you know, some of their most touching, beautiful stories are unapologetically about kind of normal working class, ordinary everyday lives. And I thought that this kind of almost parody of, you know, Upstairs, Downstairs, or Downton Abbey, like taking it to that level that they've not. I don't think they've really explored those kind of class structures in historical terms. And there's some, I think there's some the key lines there where Devonshire is talking at the grave, and she says something like, you know, we're us working class people have to make our own way, don't we? And then she says to him, you know, you're remember your place, your staff. So, you know, she's reinforcing in him what she knows is her status and what he should perceive as her status. And as you say, the upper classes are just as rotten. They're just as broke. They're just as crooked. You know, they're just out for themselves, and they're willing to manipulate and use. And this, I think, is maybe one of the strengths of using that class structure. You know, does, like, as you asked, does Lillian Burnham deserve her ending? Well, I'm not advocating for, you know, for actual
curse-based murder.
Curse-based murder. I'm not advocating for that. I never have. Oh no, actually, there was that one time.
It's all coming out during the election campaign, isn't it?
And but I think there's a political aspect to that. It's like, you know, she's horrible. She's using people around her because she's broke, and she's willing for a man to die in order to provide her with it. And I think there's a very interesting class discussion going on there. Or again, maybe I'm just reading far too much into it.
No, it's interesting, and also, you know, Devonshire, she doesn't have, you know, she's quite mean to him, you know, even though she sees them as kind of the same, or tries to manipulate him by saying they're the same. She won't even get him lemon with his water, will she? Like, you know, she doesn't think he deserves that, or she's, you know, making the point that he doesn't deserve that, you know. comparing him to
Yeah,
a dog that's pissed on the walls and everything like that. You know, it's kind of that's not.
Yeah, I mean that was fundamentally that was for a carry-on joke. see also, you know, the carry-on jokes at the beginning. But I really love that line. I'm trying to remember it so that maybe one day I'll have a reason to use it. Where she offers him a glass of water and he says, "No ice or lemon," and she just says, "Don't flatter yourself," which I think is absolutely glorious.
Yeah,
if ever anyone like adds something to a drink order, that's what I'm coming back.
The more mundane, the better. Like if you say, if someone would like a glass of water and they just say, sparkling, and you just don't flatter yourself. That's the more basic you can make it.
Oh, that's pretty good. I quite like that as well.
Yeah.
That is interesting that she thinks she's above him, but then, you know, we're seeing a classic pecking order, aren't we? Where, you know, she's a servant, but in a very well-to-do house, so therefore is she above a kind of itinerant, you know, tradesman, basically. You know, she gives him the key to the tradesman's entrance, you know, which I know is for the...
That's a carry-on joke in itself, isn't it?
Exactly, it very much is. So I think that structure's really fascinating and interesting. But of course, you know, the ultimate, it's the ultimate leveler is the conqueror worm. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what strata of society you're at. As Nathaniel then says, you know, we're all food for the conqueror worm.
Yeah, and there is the genuine horror bit, of course, where he's burying her alive. You know, that is always an upsetting type of thing to happen in a horror, isn't it? And that's they don't shy away from that in this either. That's straightforwardly played. Yeah, there's no subversion of that. That is just what he's doing, and it's nasty. And then you have that brief flash where she appears as a quasi ghost or imagination at the piano. You know. And those sorts of phantoms, as with Marston's character, you know, you've got no suggestion that they're linked to the curse even necessarily directly. These are his imaginings, or these are fevers, or these are separate ghosts, perhaps. You know, it's vague, but I mean, I guess I like that aspect of it. So you're teasing out some things I like about it.
Yeah. You're right. That's the great thing. I spotted when, I saw when Devonshire turns up as a ghost, and then I spent a little bit of time when Nathaniel turns up at a ghost. I went back to the scene again because I hadn't spotted whether he's constantly talking to the bust or whether he directs, whether he addresses Nathaniel directly. Because, you know, at the end he picks up the bust and he goes, "Well, that's quite enough of you." And he moves it like that's where the source of the disturbance is coming from. And I was like, oh, does he actually look at it? But he does. He looks him dead in the eye. So he is definitely seeing, or at least they are in his vision. He's definitely seen both of those. He never sees the curse. So, you know, this adds another layer of what's actually going on here and who is actually cursed.
That's true. I don't think I actually saw. I think on the first viewing I was like, I think he does at some point like reflected in something, but I think I was just thinking of the opening sequence. So I thought, I think you're right. Quigley doesn't, does he?
Yeah, he never actually sees it. You see it at the beginning with Nathaniel, and then you see it at the end when it attacks Lillian, and that's it. And you don't see it at all in between. Well, as far as we know, keener-eyed viewers may be able to say, "Oh, well, actually, I think you'll." I don't know why I'm doing that voice for someone who would be doing exactly the same thing as I would do. Well, actually, David and John, I think you'll find at 12 minutes and 22 seconds, there's an inverted reflection in a teapot.
Thank you for giving our listeners imagined nicer voices at the last minute. That's true solidarity. Quickly, by the way, I know. Obviously, we'll get into the casting stuff that we'd like to talk about. But I actually was, because I was IMDbing it to refresh my memory about some of the basic aspects of it, and because I'd typed in IMDb and The Curse of the Ninth together, I got another credit, which is there's another TV. I don't know if you saw this, but there's another TV show in fairly recent years in British TV history that's done an episode that's both called The Curse of the Ninth and is about this concept of the Curse of the Ninth. Did you see what that is?
Shall we both say it together?
Yeah, 3,
One,
2,
2,
3.
1. Midsummer Murders.
There you go.
Should we try that again, David?
Yeah, you did the count. You did the count up. I did the count down.
Okay, I'll count down.
All right.
3,
2. Wait.
2, 1.
It's been a long year. All right.
Hang on, David. There's this weird shadowy figure I've just got to let out of my my living room. Hang on one sec.
If you could.
Okay.
This is actually harder without the camera, this bit, actually.
You just count. You do the counting.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Midsummer Murders.
You see, it doesn't work if you don't actually speak when you get to 1.
Well, this itself is turning into a carry-on bit, so I think Midsummer Murders is the program we're talking about.
Why don't you do a clean version of that for us, David?
Yeah, all right. Of what bit?
From the top.
From the top of the episode. Hi, hello, John.
So, which episode was it in 2018 that in the sixth episode of the 19 series also dealt with the Curse of the Ninth, David?
It was Midsummer Murders.
Oh, wow, really? Oh, interesting.
You know what? Fuck you. I'm not editing any of that out. That's all staying in. People will see us for what we are.
Yeah, I did spot that.
Yeah. Good. That's all I had to say about that. Literally, that took 3 minutes. That's all I had to say.
Oh, I've got loads to say about that. Right. Anyway, go back to your point.
Well,
first.
no, my point. Well, just because we were talking about the curse, was what did you think of that end sequence in itself? Did you think that was like, I guess, judged just right? You know, in terms of what you see of the curse, what you don't, all the timing of all that and everything. Was that good?
Yes, I did. You're kind of going to make me jump ahead ever so slightly, but I think it's worth it. So you asked specifically about the timing. So I think from the moment that she shuts the manuscript and she walks up the stairs. Now, first of all, the music that we're hearing, it goes into a little kind of psycho-esque sting. It goes into a little bit Hitchcockian, which obviously I'm here for, but also it then immediately reminded me of the scene in Psycho where you know you're in the house, particularly when Arbogast is falling down the stairs. So first of all, it just put me in mind of that, which was delightful. Then she goes up the stairs and it takes. And it was on like the second or third watch where I thought this is actually taking quite a long time, and particularly when you know they're basically going to telegraph the jump scare, right? So they build it and they build it and they build it and they build it, and then it's not the jump scare because she turns around and she sees there's nothing there. So you're like, well, it's obviously the jump scare's now coming up, which indeed it does, and he suddenly comes out and he looms out. And I was watching it for the third time, and I thought, do you know what? I think I know why they've done this, or I've got a theory why they've done this, because that is too long. It doesn't need to be that long. They've already built the tension. If they're going to do a double jump scare, it's already going to work. And I think it's because the music is so great, and I think because of this episode, I think this episode is a bit of a, you know, it's a love letter to their composer, Christian Henson, and I think part of the beauty of this episode is that they've interwoven that into something towards the end of their series, and one of their long-term collaborators, I think he's scored every single one thus far. Lovely voice listeners, correct me if I'm wrong. So I think he's done everyone, and I think they've just gone, this is yours, this is your episode, go nuts. And I think what he comes up with is so beautiful, that last sequence of her walking up the stairs, I think is a touch too long, and I think it needs to be so that we get the full impact of the score. So for that alone, I thought it all worked absolutely beautifully. So I guess I'm coming at it from a different, slightly meta angle. Yeah, it worked. Him coming up, him kind of looming over her falling down. It is a bit gory. You see like one of her bones sticking out of the top of her collarbone. And then that kind of beautiful shot of the sheet music raining down on her. Yeah, I think and the music swells, and I think it's beautiful. I think it's a lovely, lovely ending.
I suppose this. I mean, I like I'm not sure about the shadow going up the stairs. I'm not sure if I quite like that, but I did like I guess the penultimate shot of the curse where he's sort of behind her, but he sort of seems to sink down as well. So it's, you know, if you to take that it's actually a physical being of some sort, which you see, you know, it is that M.R. James thing, isn't it? These like ghosts often take on quite physical material forms. It's like he's melting, almost like the T-1000. He's sort of melting into the floorboards almost. So he kind of, if you accept his rules, he is sort of feasibly coming up behind her. Then, you know, he's sort of creeping up, going around the other way basically, and then he rises up in front of her. You know, which is a great jump scare. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was largely very effective, and actually, I did wonder again. as I say, I could have maybe done with a little bit more ambiguity in this story overall, but the fact that at the end the curse is not, it's killed her, but it's not actually prevented the symphony existing, has it?
But I don't think that's its point. But also, let's bear in mind that he is non-corporeal. He never proves himself to be responsible. He's never physically responsible for the deaths. Like, he shoots himself and she falls over a staircase. That's factually what happens, because he never actually lays a finger on them. So again, that adds this element of, is it the heat-oppressed brain, or, you know, what is it? We don't actually get a clear answer. If you want ambiguity, you don't get a clear answer as to, I don't think, as to whether the curse does exist or whether the curse is the malicious figure.
Or killed, or deliberately killed Marston's character because if the curse knows what the future is, he knows that, like, if there's a sort of deterministic thing going on here, he knows that inevitably what's actually going to happen is she's going to complete it, 10 years from then or whatever. So the only target is ever her. Even Quigley is not a target because he knows the curse knows what's going to happen. He knows Quigley isn't going to complete it. You could interpret it as.
You could, but I think they make a lot of hay out of when Quigley turns up after he's stolen the manuscript, about talking how he feels unwell and he can feel the curse already upon him, kind of darkening on him. Now again, whether that's this is where we get into weird areas of psychosomatic and paranoia and things like that, but they're suggesting there's a link between how both of those men behave when they're under threat of the curse. Now, she never thinks she's under threat from the curse, and in fact she probably never is under threat from the curse. It's a classic how do you cheat death story. It's a classic selling your soul to the devil, which again is something that occurred to me. It does have a lot in common. It has some in common with How Do You Plead to an extent.
Yeah, the elevator switcheroo at the end. Yeah,
exactly. Which again is Guillermo Morales, but also it's the age old. Well, it's the Faust story. We're coming back to Faust yet again, and we're also coming back to, in musical terms, the only one I can really think of is Robert Johnson, the blues player who legend has it met the devil on the crossroads and sold his soul to be able to play guitar. So we're in that area, and obviously Quigley's mission is to cheat death of his victory. Now, why the curse is doing this? I mean, it's a curse. It's got, I don't believe it's trying to deprive the world of people's ninth symphonies. I don't think that's it. In fact, it's not that, because the whole the mythos behind the curse is that you die after you complete it.
It's definitionally about completion of Ninth Symphonies.
Yeah, it's
it needs
exactly
that to happen.
About completion. Yeah, which is kind of fascinating. So I don't think he's trying to prevent the ninth from reaching the world or being completed. I think he wants to see it completed.
It's funny you should mention the Robert Johnson thing, isn't it? Because what this obviously for classical geeks, the Curse of the Ninth is a thing, but for more pop culture geeks, the 27 Curse is the thing, isn't it? The 27 Club, as they call it. And I think Robert Johnson was one of the members of that club.
Was he really?
I believe so, and I think probably one of the most famous, relatively recent years example is Amy Winehouse, isn't it? But that that's the sort of pop culture version
Hendrix,
of this.
Cobain.
Yeah. So it's quite resonant with that.
Bolan?
I think. Yeah, but possibly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I like that. I like the way the curse was manifested. I've deliberately not paused it on that because I'm like, I think because you do see him, whatever, and I'm like, I don't really want to see more than I've already glimpsed. I think that's going to demystify it not in a good direction. So I'll probably never do that, but
Well, I'm going to come back to the curse itself probably towards the end when we start doing cast lists. But I just wanted to talk properly about the curse and about the story of the Curse of the Ninth. Because you thought you'd hit peak John last week, David. Strap in, son. So I've worked for a few music organisations over the years. I've been quite lucky to end up being exposed to more classical music than maybe someone who has my musical tastes and income normally would. And particularly over lockdown, because we were working from home, I found that I could not work to any music that had lyrics in it. And I ended up putting on a lot of Radio 3 while I was working in the afternoons and listening to exclusively classical music. And as I think you'll know where this has ended up, that you could attest that what happens now is when I get a bit too drunk at someone's house, I sit them down and force them to listen to the whole of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony,
yeah.
whilst barking at them that it's the greatest piece of music ever made, and without it, all music would not exist. So this is to say that this ticked a lot of my boxes because of a fascination I've developed for classical music. And this is probably why I enjoyed it much more, particularly with the scenes where they're discussing the composition. Because for me, like, music, but for some reason, particularly classical music, strikes me as a unique form of magic in art terms. You can take, writing and filmmaking and theatre and novels and poetry and visual art and all of those things, and even if I can't do them, I can see how they're done. Mm. I can see how that can be achieved. I can ascertain what the craft is there and fundamentally how the building blocks are put together. With classical music, it just blows my mind every time I listen to a symphony and go, how
do you see that? Or how do you hear that?
Yeah.
In your
how do you make
mind?
that?
Yeah.
Where do you start to make something like that? You've got hundreds of instruments all doing different things but working beautifully. How? It's one of those things I can't comprehend, which is why I was really enjoying it. So to get more specific about the Curse of the Ninth, because I have listened to a lot of Mahler over the years as well, and those 9 symphonies, although I don't yet know them as well as Beethoven's, but that's something I'll carry on with. And it is beautiful, dramatic, sweeping, glorious music. And there's a wonderful scene at the near the beginning when they're telling him about the curse, and they replay the scene where she's going up to his room, and they start the explanation to him as they put on the first movement of Mahler's Ninth while they're talking about the curse and they're talking about Mahler. And then they go into the flashback scene, and the music swells at exactly the right moment, and it becomes beautifully dramatic as she's going up the stairs, as she hears the cry and she's going up the stairs. And it's about like 1 minute 23 or something into the first movement that you get that switch. And again, I was just so in love with how they took that and they used that as their editing guide track. And it's a piece of existing Mahler, and they went, okay, well, how do we use this to create a dramatic scene and a dramatic moment? And I love the way that those things fed together. In terms of the curse itself, I kind of feel like they probably read the same Wikipedia article as I did, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think they've got any more to tell us, really, than what you will find under the Curse of the Ninth Wikipedia article. There's some other little interesting facts, though, that I found out. Now, obviously, Mahler actually died in the middle of writing his 10th symphony, so that was the symphony that he never completed. But then that sort of backs up the curse that you will die after the completion of the Ninth Symphony. So that kind of works out. There's all these nice little similarities. So they already make quite a big deal of when Quigley comes in, where they're saying to her things like, Devonshire has disappeared, she's gone to ground, and they keep dropping these little hints that they know what's actually happened to her. And gone to ground, and I think Steve Pemberton refers to the sheet of manuscript as him unearthing it.
Yeah,
which I
he
thought
does.
was lovely.
Yeah.
But what the Ninth Symphony, Mahler's Ninth Symphony, was actually called, and he says it in the German. He says it's Das Lied von Erde, which is what Mahler called it. He's quite right. They're quite right that he said, "Oh, this is a song cycle," in a way, because he was trying to pretend that it wasn't his Ninth Symphony. But German speakers among you, of which I'm not one, will know that is the Song of the Earth. So again, there's this lovely fact that the manuscript is buried under the earth, and then Devonshire is buried under the earth, and it ties back into the fact that Marler's original cycle was called the Song of the Earth. And apparently he did ask his wife to burn the 10th manuscript after his death. But I think people dispute whether that actually happened or not. Interestingly, though, I also found out one of the people responsible for kind of rediscovering Mahler. So Mahler was banned by the Nazis. So no one really heard his music until the mid 1940s, and it was actually Leonard Bernstein who kind of who revived him when he was head of the I think the New York Symphony, and he started rediscovering Mahler and telling everyone how great it was, and he eventually went on to record them all, to the extent that Leonard Bernstein was actually buried with Mahler's Fifth Symphony in his coffin.
Is that right?
Which I thought was a really lovely little crossover. Now, I haven't seen Maestro, the Bradley Cooper film all about Leonard Bernstein, so I don't know how much is in there about his relationship with Mahler. Like he played one of the pieces like 2 days after John Kennedy's assassination. He played another of the adagios at Robert Kennedy's funeral, conducted, I should say. Bernstein conducted. So there's all these interesting kind of Mahler modern parallels going through this, that again, this is just, for me, this is beautiful, because it's like, I really do want to go away and look into that and find out these beautiful facts and these beautiful things of which there are many out there.
Makes me vaguely wonder whether this was just a bit of a research project for them, or whether it's again like talking about crosswords and magic and everything. Maybe it's either a Shearsmith or a Pemberton passion, like classical music in general, or Mahler in particular.
Yeah, and it does come back to what I've said before about what I think is their fascination with class, partly, but also with scare quotes around both high art and low art. And we've talked about this before, about how they can, they'll do a Shakespeare episode, they'll do a rhyming couplets episode, they'll do a commedia dell'arte episode. That are all these quite I'm going to say quite classical notions of art, but then they will wink and nod at the audience and they'll say, yes, we know what we're doing. And also I think in one of the podcasts I said, and also we'll do fart gags, and we challenged anyone to let us know if there have been any fart gags. I don't think I've noticed any as yet, but who knows. I guess fart gag in terms of Smelly John, perhaps, in the very first episode. But anyway, the point is that they like to straddle these two worlds, and they wear their knowledge very lightly, I find, and very appealingly. And I think fundamentally what they're saying is there is no high art and low art. There is just good art, and there are interesting things.
And patterns, and beliefs patterns about them.
And there's no reason why you can't use these themes for a again, scare quotes, kind of mainstream audience, although obviously 10 p.m. on BBC Two on a Wednesday is not exactly mainstream, but they do touch on these kind of high classical notions, and I find like this is maybe the culmination of a lot of that, where they're going to say, well, we're going to take a deep dive into like a symphony, we're going to take a deep dive into how music, how concertos are written, how symphonies are written, but also it's going to be an absolute banger of a ghost story. And I think that's how they've done so well to tie their two loves together there, and I think that's kind of why I've gone for it so hard.
Definitely a far cry from Last Night at the Proms, although that's another episode you could compare it to in terms of engaging with classical music and class.
Yes, that's very true. We've talked before actually about how they often use classical music or popular variants of classical music that I think we said at the time that feels like they use it as a way to elevate things, right from right from A Quiet Night In, they're using Rachmaninoff throughout that. Although I suspect they're using that partly because it then turns into Without You by Nilsson. But also, there's another one that other than Last
Diddle
Night.
Diddle Dumpling strikes to mind.
Yes, Diddle Diddle Dumpling, and also Time to Say Goodbye at the end of 12 Days of Christine
yes,
as
of
well.
course.
We've talked about before. Yeah. So again, I think this is just them continuing to explore a fascination that they've had all the way around. Now, more cynical people, I understand, might say this is them repeating themselves, and I can understand if anyone's kind of going, "Oh, they're just retreading the same things," and I want some shocks, I want something different. I'm just loving, I'm loving experiencing this journey, this artistic journey. I'm sounding very pompous about it now, but it's true. I'm really loving experiencing this journey where they're exploring these things that interest them, and they're finding out new ways to deal with them. And this is why I'm delighted this is the penultimate episode, because we don't know what's going to happen next week. It's not going to be a again, scare quotes, usual episode. It's going to be something other. It's going to be a deadline, or it's going to be a 3x3. Like, we know that from the promotions already. We know that the fact that it's, it's called Plodding On, and it's, the only picture available is them in their suits, and there's no description at all, basically.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
So we know. So this is the last proper episode we're going to get, as far as I'm concerned. And for that reason, I absolutely adored it. I think, this is no wonder you've chosen to do your last proper episode here, to put it here, because I think it's beautiful, and I think it shows off as well all of the skill and talent of everyone they've been working with. From, we've talked a lot before about costume and set and production design and how amazing they are. And I think they've all just had an absolute ball. They've had an absolute delight making this, and I enjoyed every single second of it.
Well, that is very persuasive and very eloquent, and you have made me like it a little bit more. Although I think if I was pushed, I'd still say that the sort of framing of it and the tradness of it is maybe an inadequate frame for all that interesting stuff that you just mentioned. I also note that actually, even though I'm more negative on this one, my complaints are not the same as the trolley problem, where my problem was one of detecting repetition and staleness, essentially. This is not that. If anything, this is just that they're doing something that I haven't seen on Inside Number 9 before, but one which maybe I think is unsuitable for it or inadequate for it.
Interesting there that you say if you're pushed, which you very well may be by a 6'3" curse,
and the camera goes back on at this point.
and you see what I'm actually wearing.
Well, promises. Well, let's do that. Let's do casting then. You got some casting tidbits.
I have got some casting tidbits. Yes. Let's start with. I'm going to start with Hayley Squires, who's Devonshire. No disrespect, but has the least prolific CV. She's in I, Daniel Blake, and she was very recently in Beau is Afraid.
Oh, which I've still not seen yet. I've still not got around to that.
The Ari Aster film. So she appears to be doing lots of little nice pieces of work, and she's very, very good in this. You've then got Eddie Marsan, who is just beautiful. Now, Eddie Marsan, I think I'd probably first kind of logged who he was, I think probably after Happy Go Lucky. But he'd worked with Mike Leigh already and Vera Drake before that. Before that, he's actually in Gangs of New York as well, which I'd completely forgotten. He plays in the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes. He's Inspector Lestrade. So nice little Sherlock tidbit for us there. He is he's kind of ludicrously delightful in Deadpool 2, by the way, which I know you still haven't seen, which I love, and he's wonderfully scenery chewing in that. I didn't realise how long he'd been around though. He's in a comic strip presents in 1988.
I saw that one. Yeah, isn't he like Youth in Chip Shop or something like that?
Yeah, Youth and Chip Shop, uncredited, I think, but that almost makes him like TV comedy royalty, right?
Yeah.
And we're okay. He just about saves the day for us, because although he's only a voice in it, he is in the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Oh, phew.
So we have enough of a link to Doctor Who, I think, to salvage it.
I was getting worried there.
Because no one else has been. I'm actually quite surprised Eddie Marsan hasn't been in a Doctor Who. You could use him beautifully in a Doctor Who, I reckon.
I thought he actually might have worked with them before. I was trying to remember if he'd had like a League cameo in the Christmas special or a Psychoville appearance or something. But
nothing that I could see. I couldn't see any Psychoville or League. But I didn't click through everything that they or Gatiss may have been in. Natalie Dormer now. Here's one of those actors who I frankly don't have much of an idea of who this is, because they're massive in Game of Thrones.
Right.
They're also massive in The Hunger Games, which is another sci-fi series that I've not watched at all.
Yeah,
so both
she's
of
like the
those
sort of leader of the rebellion in the Hunger Games, I think, or someone.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the Mon Mothma of the Hunger Games, basically.
if you will.
Yeah.
And the Marguerite Tyrell. Is that
Marjorie Tyrell, yeah. She basically played Anne Boleyn on, was it The Tudors, and then went on to play a very Anne Boleyn-esque
I was about
character.
to say that as well. Yeah, which was funny. But I then remembered I did actually see a play she was in a few years ago at the Theatre Royal in Haymarket called Venus in Fur. That I remember very little about, other than she was fine, but also there because she's a sexy name from Game of Thrones, and I'd never seen Game of Thrones, so I think that was lost on me. So that's how that leads us to the final cast member.
Yes.
And this is actually, for me, this is one of the most interesting ones. So the Curse is played by James Swanton. Now, first of all, I wanted to know how tall James Swanton is, and he's 6'3". Because when you look at James Swanton's IMDb page, he has played such characters as the Mummy in Lot 249, the Spirit in Host, the title role in Frankenstein's Creatures. His CV is basically a list of monsters.
Playing curses, essentially.
This man has cornered the market. He just turned, they're like, we need like a spooky figure. Maybe they've got a couple of lines, maybe not. We need like a really imposing spooky figure. And they're like, James Swanton's our guy. Like, he is clearly the go-to guy for a tall, menacing character.
It's almost like he's the new Doug Bradley, who did all the Pan's Labyrinth stuff and has done Star Trek and everything, but he's gone on to have actual speaking parts and like substantial roles and stuff. It sounds like he's the starting out Doug Bradley.
Yeah,
not Doug Bradley. Sorry, I think I got that wrong. Never mind. I'll insert the correct name afterwards.
I love it when you do that. Yeah. Could you just do it like one of those announcers who just kind of goes, and the correct name is Bob Carroll.
I'll make it sound very very unconvincing.
If you could, yeah. But also it says in his bio that he annually performs A Christmas Carol amongst other ghost stories at London's Charles Dickens Museum. And I think that sounds jolly lovely.
It does.
I think that sounds jolly lovely, but also I imagine Callow is fucking furious that someone else is doing his shtick.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, I mean, is it a one-person one, or is it the Ghost of Christmas Future just doing his own?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's it. I bet he uses his physicality quite gloriously when it comes to doing the ghosts.
Yeah.
Moving away from the cast, I think this is a really appropriate moment to talk about Christian Henson a little bit more, because he has done the music for all of the series of Inside Number 9, as far as I can tell. I haven't double checked that, but he certainly does the very early ones, and I've seen his name come up pretty much every time for a fair few seasons now. But also, this is not the first time he's written original music, so this is quite interesting, because obviously we've got your very favourite song from the last weekend.
Yeah, Blue Jean Baby, classic. Baby. Yeah.
Blue Jeans Baby, which I believe he's responsible for. Now, there's also 2 songs in Last Gasp as well. You know, is it Tony J. Parsons? It's not Tony Parsons, is it?
The pop star visits the family.
Yeah, the pop star, Michael Bublé, when he visits. And they play 2 of his songs on the stereo on CD. And I rewatched that again recently, and they're composed by Christian Henson as well. So again, he's done a lot for them to add to their world. And again, I do genuinely feel like this is where they've just gone, Christian, my friend, let rip. Off you go. It's then orchestrated. So it says at the end in the credits that it's performed by the BBC Philharmonic Orchestra and the London Recording Orchestra. And I haven't checked this out, but my suspicion is that the BBC Philharmonic are probably providing the Mahler symphony that they use, and then they will have used maybe the London Recording Orchestra in order to create the actual music for this. I don't know. I just found that slightly interesting that there were 2 orchestras, and it occurred to me one had done the Mahler and one the other. And I think it's a wonderful piece of work, beautiful music. But also, when I was looking up Christian Henson, do you know who his mum is?
No.
Una fucking Stubbs.
I don't know who I thought you were going to say, but that was out of left field for me.
He's the son of Aunt Sally.
Okay, all right, cool. And another Sherlock connection in a different direction.
And yeah, of course, and another Sherlock connection, of course. That didn't even occur to me. She'll always be Aunt Sally to me,
of course.
There's just a couple of other things I want to make sure that I get in before we sum up. So while I was researching Mahler as well, there was this really lovely story that I heard. So he was a patient of Freud's, and after he died, Freud had said about a story that Mahler had told him that he didn't live in a very harmonious household apparently, and one day there was basically an argument, a big fight presumably between his parents.
But Freud loved that.
Rushed out. Yeah, of course he did. So he rushed out into the street. But when he rushed out into the street, there was a hurdy-gurdy in the street that was playing a folk tune. And he said at this moment that he kind of had an epiphany. And Freud described it as, from then on, high tragedy and jokey amusement became inextricably linked in his world. And I read that and I thought, that just describes the whole of Inside Number 9, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah.
High tragedy and jokey amusement. I mean, not my words, ladies and gentlemen. The words of Sigmund Freud. Welcome, Sigmund Freud.
I didn't realise we had him this week. It's pretty impressive.
Oh, is he not showing up again?
Yeah, well, I don't think his camera isn't working either, so I've got no idea.
On, yeah.
That's great. Though.
So the other thing, I'm nearly there. The other thing, while we're on the subject of Freud, one of the other things I'm glad I won't get away without not mentioning is Hamlet. So I was watching the scene with Nathaniel talking to Quigley, basically when he's kind of he's tormenting him at the piano and he's teasing him at the piano, and he's kind of said, "Why don't you do anything? What is it? Is it fear? It's cowardice?" And he says to him, it's cowardice, basically. And it reminded me of the scene, which you'll have to forgive me. I'm now trying to find here in my copy of Hamlet, and it's basically the scene where it reminded me of when old Hamlet turns up in the chamber of Gertrude when Hamlet is talking to her after he's just killed Polonius. Oh, sorry guys, spoilers everyone. After Hamlet's just killed Polonius, and the ghost turns up and says he appears, and Hamlet says, "Do not come." Sorry, Hamlet says, "Do not come, your tardy son to chide. That, lapsed in time and passion, let's go by the important acting of your dread command."
That's Andrew Scott again, isn't it?
No, that's Jimmy Cricket, actually.
Perfect.
But it reminded me of that. There was that lovely moment where I kind of thought, oh, a ghost kind of taunting a young man for procrastination and not having the courage to do what they need to do. I mean, we've talked before about how there's only 7 stories, but that's definitely in there. You got a bit of Macbeth in there as well, with the ghost. Do not shake that gory locks at me. I don't think we've mentioned Amadeus yet either. Actually,
yeah, it's weird that's taken so long, hasn't it? Yeah, because that's the obvious thing of composer being jealous, a mediocre or composer by relative standards being jealous of another composer. Although it's interesting that this this is not a living rivalry. It's just between him and a dead man.
Yeah, so it's definitely a different thing, but obviously everything about classical music or composers, post Amadeus is going to remind us of our Amadeus, I think, isn't it? I haven't seen it in a long time. I'm almost certain that reveal of Nathaniel sat in the chair in front of the fire is very similar to a shot of Salieri at one point. I'm certain of that. Also, you've got another of those composer coincidences. Mozart was writing a requiem when he died. He's fundamentally writing his own requiem, and if someone genuinely believes they're going to die at the end of their ninth, then they believe they are also writing their own swan song,
which is something in Amadeus, I believe, almost completely ahistorically they suggest that Salieri was deeply involved with as well, which I don't think there's really any evidence for that whatsoever, as with most of the stuff in Amadeus, really. But it's obviously got to be mentioned.
Good story, though, isn't it?
A pretty good story. Also gave me slight echoes this episode of Barton Fink. Just the kind of I guess kind of guy coming into the orbit of this true artist, and his partner, who's sort of maybe using him for different ends and all that sort of stuff. But I really like Barton Fink, so it's always going to echo a little bit. Yeah, well, I think we've actually talked for nearly 3 times the length of this episode, so this has been. I didn't think this was going to be a long one, but that was maybe just because I went in cool on it. But I'm hugely excited about next week, or rather, a couple of days from now, about the finale. Got no idea what's going on. Not even really detailed speculations about it, other than that I would like to see some of the notes, so to speak, in this being built upon, of awareness of what they're doing, what they're completing. But other than that, just absolutely happy to go along for whatever ride they've got prepared for us.
Yeah, I'm just going in. I'm trying to want nothing and expect nothing, because I think expectation is the father of disappointment. So I'm trying not to put myself in a place where I have any preconceptions about it. But obviously I already do. The fact that, they have put out so little information. Or did we notice as well, did someone point out that on IMDb, if you look up the episode, you get a picture of the publicity still from the bus episode?
Oh, yeah, someone did spot that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they've just put that up because there's no other image to go with it. So maybe that's nothing. Maybe that's a red herring.
Oh, well,
but it does.
I'll tell you what. Here's a yes/no sort of speculation question, I guess, because it's just because I was thinking of the self-referentiality in this, and I was thinking about Deadline. Do you think any of next week's finale is going to feature Shearsmith and Pemberton playing themselves?
Yes.
Yes, yes. I think I also go with yes, but I've got no idea how much of that will be. And how deniable it'll be in a sense. It might be kind of interesting. Right. Well, let's push on to that then. Can't wait to wrap this up and to talk to you about the last one.
Yeah, I can't wait, but I am also a little saddened. It's it really is. There is going to be a genuine hole in my life once Inside Number 9 is not there.
I'm also sad, a little melancholy about that, and about the opportunity to chat to you so regularly about this, but also I'm not going to have to put up with the fucking Andrew Scott impressions anymore, so that's going to be...
Oh, contraire, Sherlock.
Oh, God. So, yeah, swings and roundabouts. Right, well, say goodbye, John.
Goodbye, John.
And goodbye from me. See you next time.
So So I become an enemy. The story's long, don't wanna know. Why can't you tell it bores me so? Don't wanna smile or shake your hand. I'm happy listening to the band.